probably in the last, say, 7 years or so, 7 to 8 years, Mum started getting the onset of dementia. She wouldn't recognise Dad much more over the phone, and there'd be, paranoia and crying, and sometimes the police would come around. So it was getting quite radical. So a phone call one day, and the ambulance had fallen over, and ambulance had arrived, and she got taken up to A&E with Dad, and she ended up being admitted to the delirium ward. And I'm thinking, oh heck, Lord, what am I going to do here? What have you got for me? Because I sort of, in a sense, probably felt a bit lost, and said, oh Lord, what have you got to offer? How can we help Mum and stuff like that. So anyway, we go into the dementia ward, and like I said, it's a pretty scary place really. And Mum was really upset and crying, and there's a lot of stuff happening, as you can imagine. So I started praying about it, and I remember I said to Mum, hey Mum, remember that when I was young we had that black Labrador, and it was a good and faithful dog and kind and gentle. She said, yeah, I remember that dog, And I said, well, that's what God's like, Mum. He's gentle and faithful, and he never leaves us or forsakes us. He's always beside us. And I was like, at that point there, God entered her life, I think, and she started to comprehend and understand what God was like in amongst the confusion. And we spent probably about a week up there, and within that week, she started talking more about God, and then one day she came out and she said, Mark, I remember the word, she said, this is a real monumental time of my life. I was just going, no way. She said, this is a real monumental time of my life that I can really feel the closeness of God with me. And, and even amongst all the confusion and stuff like that, God was there. And so bringing that scripture, nothing separates us from his love. And we got together, me, Mum and Dad, and we all prayed together, which is an amazing moment. And probably my whole life I've almost, in a sense, prayed for that moment that I could pray with my mum and dad. There's never been that opportunity to do that, and it's like in hard times and struggles, that's what God's in. There's no doubt. I can just through this moment, it's just my faith is so much increased by it that I say, wow, God, you're at work, and you can work in these moments. I started talking to her, ringing her, and then she's saying the Lord's Prayer. I said, Mark, I know the Lord's Prayer. And I'm going, you're joking. Because you got to remember, we grew up in a household, God was never mentioned. Grace was never spoken. I've been over it piece by piece with the Lord's Prayer with her so she gets an understanding, because I was thinking, man, is she really saved? Does she really know God? Because it's almost too bizarre. So at one time we were, I think I went over to Palmerston to visit and took them out for a picnic and stuff and come back. We finished this picnic and we went back to the unit, and Mum's got a little room and she loves the room. She just thinks her room's really cool. She's got her name on the door outside, and she goes to the room and sometimes she says she just sits back and just thinks about the Lord or thinks about different things, but she's really, really, really content. And we walked in there and I noticed Mum's legs, her feet were swollen. Hold on a sec. And I said to her, Mum, your feet are a bit swollen. Do you want me to put a cold flannel on them, to help the swelling? And she said, oh, that'll be good, Mark, that'll be good. And there's Dad there, seen this whole thing, and I got Mum's feet up there, and I put a cold flannel on her feet. And we got my dad looking, and then I said, oh, this is amazing, man, because this is what Jesus did to his disciples. He washed their feet. And this is what I'm doing to you. I'm ministering to you. And this is what God's ministering to you right now, and you too, Dad. I said, there's my dad there and me there. And I'm washing Mum's feet like Jesus washes our feet and cleans us. And what a beautiful moment, like my life. I never, ever expected it to ever happen. And there's my 91-year-old dad looking and seeing, getting ministered to, and go, wow, God, you're so good. Even amongst the muck and the sickness, you're right there amongst it all, ministering. And yeah, that moment will hold for the rest of my life. It's just incredible, absolutely an amazing moment. And we just, yeah, and then I said, let us all hold hands and pray the Lord's Prayer. And so we all held hands and prayed, you know. It's the first time in my life I've heard my dad pray. So yeah, no, just yeah, that time really blew me away. So we just, and now so that Mum's still in the ward, and I'm still talking to Dad, and I still talk to Dad about God, and he's slowly coming through, and yeah, and it's such a cool moment, really. Doesn't look so pretty on the outside, but I think it's the inside that God's doing the work, you know. God is an incredible God. Like I said, He never leaves or forsakes us. Nothing separates His love, you know.
I hope you experienced the love of Jesus as you watched this video. To see more great content, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and explore our website, fantailstudios.com.